There is a certain kind of person who has always felt slightly out of place in the world. They notice what other people miss, think about what everyone else forgets, and feel ordinary moments with unusual intensity. People call them too sensitive, too quiet, too complicated, or simply strange. They can spend an entire evening thinking about a sentence everyone else forgot before dessert. They hear the words someone speaks, but they also notice the hesitation underneath them. They see a familiar street, yet their mind catches the changed window, the missing tree, and the tired face behind the glass. Nothing enters their awareness alone, because every detail seems connected to something larger. From the outside, this can look like overthinking. From the inside, it feels like living in a world that never arrives without subtitles. Is something wrong with my mind, or does my mind simply process life differently? Could the qualities that exhaust me also reveal a form of intelligence nobody ever taught me to recognize? Feeling deeply does not automatically mean that you have a higher intelligence than everyone around you. Anxiety can create intense analysis, and sensitivity can exist without exceptional reasoning ability. But some exhausting traits can reflect distinctive cognitive strengths when they are understood and directed well. It is about the depth, detail, and number of layers your mind attempts to process at once. Several different mechanisms can create the same feeling of being mentally unlike the majority. The first is a tendency toward deep processing. Most minds filter aggressively because daily life contains more information than anyone can consciously examine. But some people appear to hold information longer, compare it more carefully, and connect it with more previous experiences. They ask why it happened, what it reveals, what caused it, and what may happen next. This can make them slower to answer a complicated question, even when their eventual answer is unusually thoughtful. Their silence is often mistaken for uncertainty, when it may actually be active construction. They are searching for the response that still makes sense 3 layers deeper. The second mechanism is heightened sensitivity to sensory and emotional information. Sensory processing sensitivity is a studied temperament trait, not an illness, and not proof of giftedness. A sensitive nervous system may register sound, texture, facial expression, atmosphere, and emotional change more strongly. The humming refrigerator everyone ignores may feel impossible to stop hearing. A crowded shop may drain them before they have bought a single thing. But the same sensitivity can make a quiet song, a painted sky, or a gentle gesture feel almost overwhelming in its beauty. It may also amplify wonder, tenderness, aesthetic detail, and the emotional meaning hidden inside small moments. The third mechanism is pattern recognition. Some minds naturally search for relationships between details that appear separate to everyone else. They notice that a friend becomes humorous whenever a conversation approaches something painful. They recognize that a project keeps failing for the same invisible reason, despite changing teams and deadlines. They can sense the structure beneath a story, an argument, a relationship, or a social group. This ability is valuable in writing, design, strategy, research, problem-solving, and understanding human behavior. A mind trained to find patterns can also discover patterns that are incomplete, accidental, or shaped by fear. Seeing 3 connected dots does not prove that you have correctly drawn the entire picture. The fourth mechanism is metacognition, which means becoming aware of your own thinking. They watch themselves experiencing it and immediately begin asking what it means. They can notice their own contradiction while they are still speaking. They can recognize that jealousy is hiding behind criticism, or that fear is disguising itself as logic. It can also turn life into a performance, watched by an audience that exists inside your own head. You laugh, then review whether your laugh sounded natural. You make a choice, then create a second version of yourself to investigate the person who chose it. Eventually, self-awareness becomes self-surveillance, and spontaneity begins to disappear. Some people learn to notice everything because missing one signal once felt emotionally dangerous. Perhaps they grew up around affection that could become criticism without warning. Perhaps they had to detect whether today was a day for questions or a day for becoming invisible. It was trained by the need to predict what kind of emotional world they were about to enter. That vigilance can later resemble intuition because it works quickly and below conscious explanation. Yet a survival alarm is not always the same thing as accurate perception. It may detect real changes while still exaggerating what those changes mean. The better question is what kind of information their mind processes well, and what kind it tends to distort. Their first hidden strength is often complexity tolerance. They can hold two opposing truths without forcing one of them to disappear. They understand that someone can love you and still be unable to treat you well. They know that confidence can contain fear and that kindness can exist beside selfishness. Where others demand a simple hero or villain, they keep seeing the complicated human being. Their second strength is emotional granularity, or the ability to distinguish between similar inner states. Instead of saying that they feel bad, they may recognize disappointment, shame, loneliness, resentment, or grief. Naming these differences can support clearer choices and more precise communication. Their third strength is meaning-making. They rarely experience an event as something that simply happened and then ended. They search for the lesson, the symbol, the repeating theme, and the part of themselves that changed. This is why many deep processors are drawn toward storytelling, philosophy, psychology, music, and art. They turn experience into language so that invisible things can finally be seen. Their fourth strength is anticipatory thinking. They naturally imagine consequences that other people notice only after a decision has already been made. In the right setting, this becomes strategy, preparation, ethical foresight, and careful judgment. In the wrong setting, it becomes paralysis caused by rehearsing 20 futures that may never exist. This is the hidden trade-off behind their mental depth. Every strength becomes painful when it operates without a limit, purpose, or place to rest. Deep processing becomes rumination when the mind examines a question that has no new evidence. Sensitivity becomes overload when every sound, mood, and demand receives equal access to the nervous system. Pattern recognition becomes suspicion when fear is allowed to complete every unfinished picture. Metacognition becomes self-criticism when awareness is used only to search for personal flaws. Empathy becomes self-abandonment when understanding someone else becomes more important than protecting yourself. This is why these people are often exhausted after days that look easy from the outside. Their body may have been still while their mind classified, compared, predicted, remembered, and felt everything at once. They may also feel profoundly lonely around people who experience their depth as unnecessary drama. When they explain what they noticed, others tell them they are reading too much into it. When they remain silent, others assume they have nothing to say. They become trapped between being misunderstood and explaining themselves until they are even more tired. The answer is not to declare that every painful trait is evidence of hidden genius. That story may feel validating, but it replaces one misunderstanding with another. Real intelligence is not proven by how much information enters your mind. It is revealed by how accurately, creatively, and responsibly you learn to use that information. The first skill is separating the signal from the story. You may notice that someone's expression changed when you mentioned your success. The changed expression is a signal. While envy, sadness, distraction, and fatigue are competing stories, keeping those layers separate protects intuition from becoming certainty without evidence. The second skill is choosing which questions deserve your depth. Not every delayed reply deserves an investigation, and not every awkward moment contains a hidden truth. Save your strongest attention for decisions, relationships, and creative problems that can actually benefit from it. The third skill is giving your nervous system deliberate periods of low input. Silence, repetitive movement, time in nature, and an uncluttered room are not signs of weakness. They are forms of maintenance for a mind that processes more than it easily releases. The fourth skill is moving thoughts outside the mind through writing, drawing, speaking, or structured planning. A thought often becomes less frightening once it has edges, language, and a place to exist. The fifth skill is choosing relationships where curiosity replaces ridicule. You do not need everyone to understand your inner world, but you need some people who do not punish its depth. Healthy people will not always agree with your interpretation, yet they will help you examine it without shaming you. Over time, something inside you begins to change. You stop asking whether being different makes you defective or superior. You begin asking where your particular mind becomes useful, honest, creative, and alive. You learn that sensitivity is an instrument, but discernment is the person who learns how to play it. You learn that depth is not measured by suffering, and that exhaustion is not proof of intelligence. You also learn that the mind trained to detect danger can be trained to recognize safety, beauty, and consistency. The world may never feel simple to you, but it no longer has to feel like an unsolved emergency. Your mind does not need to become ordinary in order to become peaceful. It needs boundaries for what enters, direction for what matters, and compassion for what it cannot solve. Perhaps you were never thinking too deeply for life itself. Perhaps you were offering your depth to questions, people, and fears that could never return its value. If you have always felt different, let this be the question you carry forward. What might change if you stopped trying to reduce your mind and started teaching it where to belong? Your difference is not automatic proof of a special intelligence, but it may contain abilities that deserve to be developed. You are not broken for noticing more, feeling more, or needing more time to understand what you experience. You may simply be a deep processing person who has spent years living without an operating manual. And the moment you learn to guide that depth, the burden that exhausted you can begin becoming wisdom,